I'm your host for this session. You've been to a couple so far, but you guys remember the Q&A kind of thing we're supposed to do? So just if you don't sure, if you open up the JNUC app, in the JNUC app in the top corner, you'll see session Q&A. Select the session that you want. If there is questions after, I have a really cool, important iPad. It's not like we're running around with mics. So put your questions there. And for that, I invite Brandon, Mike, and Josh on stage to take you through this presentation. Thank you very much, everybody.
Woo! You can't clap for yourself.
Is that what? That's what we're supposed to say. Please clap, right? Good afternoon, everybody. Everybody still awake? Had some lunch? Going through a couple sessions? Got to see an epic keynote this morning. Well, thank you for joining us today to talk a little bit about Apple Wallet, Employee Badge, physical security, Zero Trust, and how they all come together. Like Rob mentioned, I am Josh Jagfeld, the Senior Director of Technical Partnerships and Alliances at Jamf. We are the group who manages all of our relationships with external third parties to create integrations, to create that sort of 1 + 1 = 3 value for all of you who use Jamf. And I'm joined by Mike.
Hey everyone, Mike Vanderlinder. I do product manager at Jamf, working on a lot of different identity integrations, commonly Connect, but also here to talk about Employee Badge.
And Brandon Arsamont.
Brandon Arsamont. I lead our commercial efforts at Swift Connect. We're a SaaS provider, and I am an access control nerd. That's what Josh calls me anyway, right?
It is true. After the session, ask Brandon to see his little example card that shows all of the technologies that have ever existed to open doors. It's something.
You might want to sit down because you're probably going to have a conversation about it too.
And you'll need to take a nap afterwards, yeah. So again, like I said, thanks for joining us today to talk a little bit about Apple Wallet employee credentials. As many of you may be aware, or if you were here last year at JNUC, we had a session that was all about Jamf having just launched our internal program for employee badges in Apple Wallet. We rolled this out about a year ago, like Lynn mentioned in the keynote today, and really to take what was at the time a very legacy system that had been implemented probably a decade even before that, that was all based on premise in one office, and bring it into the future. Obviously, many of us today are using a ton of cloud software. Much of it is interconnected. So there's a huge opportunity for us to be able to modernize this part of our employee experience where everything else that we were doing was all based on cloud applications and modern identity to be able to do strong assertions for security and things like that. So we rolled out our employee badge program last year. You can see here, this is a picture of what the app experience looks like in the Jamf badge, how we have empowered our users to be able to use an app that they're familiar with, to load that badge on their phone. And we created a little video that I'll show you here about that experience. Is there audio?
Stacy!
Sweet.
Stacy! Come on, I see you in the window. Meet me at the door. Benny.
Forgot my employee badge. You know how it is.
It's on your iPhone now, Roger. Right in Apple Wallet. Claire.
You all right?
Who, me? I'm fine. I forgot my employee badge. Again, you think something you need every day would be easy to remember, but here we are.
Don't worry. Now you can put your badge on your iPhone.
You what?
Yep, and it's incredibly easy. Log in with single sign-on, add your employee badge to Apple Wallets, and you're done. There is no step. Hey, no stress. Only one thing to remember now.
So we rolled out our employee badge experience about a year ago, and it seems funny. You see the looks on people's faces in the video, obviously kind of for marketing purposes, but after we rolled out the program, it was remarkable to see those exact same videos recorded by employees who are in the office joking around, having someone else recording them badging into the office for the first time with a look of sheer delight on their face, very much like you saw in the video. So it's been a lot of fun to go through that journey. Obviously, Jamf believes in modernizing technology where we can, creating seamless workflows to allow users to get what they need for work in as simple of a manner as possible. Now, in the case of the characters in this video, you saw that complete transition. People who were forgetting their badges, maybe losing their badges in a cab when they were traveling, badges that broke, so they didn't work anymore, and then being able to have that delight of instant provisioning on their own in the application. That's obviously the experience we're looking to create. Now, again, last year, while we simultaneously announced that we had rolled out Employee Badge in Apple Wallet, we also announced a partnership with Swift Connect. And this was because there turns out, and we learned this along the way, painful journey, we understood that there was all this technology we had never interfaced with before because we had an on-premise system that was sort of a closed, walled garden of things that we never interfaced with. And somebody set it up a long time ago, and it just did what it did, and nobody asked any questions. But along the way, we learned that there's a multitude of systems that these access policies and these badges can be based around. And we very quickly learned that we needed a partner in the space who could help us to create an interconnection between all these things. We'll get to more of that in a little bit. But what we did discover is that there was really three core concepts that stood out. The first, as you can see here, is that employees were constantly telling us that their badges were easy to lose, especially after we had just gone through COVID and people were not consistently coming into the office every day. We would hear about people who would come home after the day they went to the office, put their badge somewhere, and then go back in 2 weeks later and it's like not where they thought it was. And so, you either have to go into the office and get a temporary badge or you don't have a temporary badge solution and there's a whole bunch of commotion there. So a great opportunity for us to really modernize something and make it digital and make it easy for users to manage themselves. The question of how you actually get the credential and how you get it to the employee, obviously a huge consideration too for people who have badging systems or badging offices. People have to go somewhere. They have to work with a person whose job it is to create badges. That may be in a specific place that's other than where they work. Then they can actually go to the office, and if they lose it, they may have to go through that whole process again. So we wanted to address that. And then finally, we saw a similarity between the idea of single sign-on and how many of us have implemented this technology for digital access to enterprise services to be able to use that same logic and the same thought that we had around digital access to these corporate services as we could apply to physical access to physical services, office spaces, secure print, parking spaces, et cetera. So in the digital access world, this is a slide many of us are familiar with, this concept of I have a set of credentials that identifies who I am as a user. That connects to or is provided by an identity provider, which is a system who knows who I am, understands where I'm based out of, what I should have access to. And then that extends out into all of the services and things that I need to access with my digital life. Well, in the physical access world, it's actually not all that different. You have a credential, which in this instance is a white plastic card instead of a username and password. That credential is issued by an authority that knows who you are and what you're supposed to have for that credential. And then that credential gets you access into all of the things that you need to work. It could be the elevator to get into the office. It could be the door to get into the office. It could be the printer to print, the parking lot downstairs. It could be the menu at the office. It could be the bus to get you to work, all these different things. So we saw the opportunity to think about these little plastic white badges instead as another life cycle. Many of us in this room think about life cycles all the time. App life cycles, device life cycles, user life cycles. So we thought, hey, how about if we turn this concept around and we turn it into yet another thing that we can digitally provision, create a life cycle around it. And that's where a lot of this was born. Now, if you have the opportunity to create digital life cycles, you obviously can start to get into the realm of not only building controls around it and security, but then also you can create unparalleled user experience because you really put the user in the driver's seat of being able to do everything that they need from the device that they carry around and love. Everybody here probably has left the house without their phone before. That's a pretty different proposition than if you leave the house without your employee badge, or if you leave the house without your phone, you're like, oh man, something's wrong, where's my phone? you'll go back and get it, but most of the time you don't even realize that you left the house without a badge. So we saw a great opportunity to do this. Now, when we stepped into the space and started thinking about all these connected systems and the things that could be applied to the idea of a digital identity and digital access, but were related to physical access and all of the components connected to it, we kind of came up with this word cloud of things that we had to consider. Multi-factor single sign-on, malicious applications. What does zero trust mean in the digital world? What could it mean in the physical world? And the distillation of that was this idea that we could use an app that we already had built for a lot of our ZTNA and zero trust access policies at Jamf, Jamf Trust, which many of you have probably heard about or have used before, and just bake physical access into that same application because so many of these principles are the same. But in order to do that, like I mentioned before, we needed to find a partner who could help us to interconnect all of the systems on the physical access side that are different than the digital access side, and that's how then we came to Swift Connect as a partner. And I'll hand it off to Mike to talk you through that.
Thank you. So with Jamf, we have all the different systems in place to support all manner of device management and security workflows for devices in these organizations, both corporate owned devices as well as personally owned devices. We want to be able to set up device management to set those very basic restrictions, help deploy the right applications, right configurations, make sure that we have an account of the device that's in the employee's hand. But then we also want to be able to leverage Jamf Security Cloud, be able to implement access policies. We want to be able to provision and assign the right privileges to these users to get access to the applications that they need. And all these services tie together using cloud identity providers. So we can also tie into those existing services for account provisioning, and again, apply access to the right applications for our users. And that's Jamf's side of it. But then with Swift Connect, we're able to find a partner in a software integration that allows for organizations to continue to use their existing hardware investments, that there's no necessary need for ripping and replacing, that you can have that software integration for providing access. So kind of a baseline of how you look at supporting these types of workflows using our devices, it always starts at device management. Again, you want to be able to account for the device in the employee's hand, but you want to support them in that journey. You want to make that entire provisioning process as easy as possible. You can rely on device management to do that, because when we look at different automated or account-driven enrollment flows, it starts with that user being able to sign into an existing account with credentials that they know to automate and set up the device to get it ready for work. But in this case, we're looking at being able to use that device for physical access. So after the device is enrolled and it's inside your management system, then we're able to set up the whole process for getting the right applications in place. Jamf Trust, of course, is critical to this entire workflow for the user, but they're using those same credentials, single sign-on, to get the device enrolled, but then also have access to the application. But on the flip side, with the end user experience, a lot of this is anchored in Apple's technologies. We've been talking exclusively about Apple Wallet and trying to build those workflows off of concepts that users are already familiar with. I think we were talking about in the keynote today even where we're probably all used to using digital boarding passes on our phones. We can save things inside of Apple Wallet, hotel keys, home keys, using Apple Pay. Like, these are just day-to-day things that we're maybe taking for granted, but we're already comfortable with. But it's that same technology that we can jump from and use for these types of experiences inside the office space. On those same devices, we're able to leverage the security that's built into the platform. So things that we don't, again, think about all that often, biometrics, Touch ID, Face ID, they're conveniences for us because it gives us access to the tools that we want to use, but they're actually used to secure the device. And in some of these workflows, that's what protects the data and the credentials that are stored on our iPhones. And then finally, I would say another piece of this that's not management per se, but again, a familiar technology that we may rely on is Find My. So in the case of losing a device, forgetting it, you have the capability through Apple services to lock a device, erase a device. You can have that comfort that that thing that's out there is not necessarily vulnerable. And in this exact situation where you have a lost device that has your, let's say, corporate access credentials stored on it, when that device is locked, it suspends access to those types of cards, just like your credit card wouldn't be accessible on a locked device. So between Jamf services, Apple services, there's always the role of the identity provider, focusing on device lifecycle, user lifecycle. When an employee comes into your organization, you probably already rely on single sign-on to provide the right credentials for that user to be able to sign into the services they're going to use day to day. You need to be able to assign that user to the appropriate, roles, groups. You need to give them the right privileges to get access to applications that they need to be productive. And you need to be able to suspend or offboard those user accounts for any number of reasons. But all those exact same workflows that you've implemented carry over to this. So for users trying to leverage these devices for physical access for employee badge, they still get to authenticate into your organization's cloud identity provider using the credentials that they're used to using for every other single sign-on process. They're using multi-factor authentication in the exact same way. You're just getting access to something new. It's not a digital app or service, it's the office space instead. But one thing that we've been talking about last year and this year at Jamf is this concept of trusted access. Again, coming out of the pandemic where you have employees that are geographically dispersed. We have data and applications and services that are everywhere. We need to be able to have some form of ensuring that only trusted users, trusted devices are going to be able to gain access to those types of data, and in this case, physical spaces. So we want to be able to lean into ensuring, again, that only trusted devices and trusted users can gain access to, say, an office. So going back to, what does the entire provisioning flow look like for that end user? Starting with something like a cloud identity provider, using single sign-on, using our various forms of multi-factor authentication to establish strong user authentication on the device. That we know exactly who that person is, that they are an employee of the company, that they have access to the right office, that they're meant to be in that particular location. We want to ensure that this is a capability that's only possible on sanctioned devices. So again, most often sanctioned device means that it's a managed device, it's something that you can account for. But there's also a concept in there, not just sanctioned, a known device, but also a safe device. You want to know that that's a device running a current version of an operating system, that there isn't some other known vulnerability that you can account for before you're going to be able to provide that workflow for that user on that device. So when we talk about trusted access, it's not necessarily a specific set of requirements, that there is a bit of a workflow to it, that you want to be able to leverage key concepts like device management to get accounting for that device. You want to be able to report on how that device is actually being used day to day, so that if there are signals and maybe why that device is vulnerable for one reason or another, that you can put some sort of guards around that. And again, finally, you're leveraging those user identity, single sign-on flows to establish trust on that device. Depending on kind of where you are in your Jamf journey, dealing with Jamf security, cloud, and access policies, there are additional ways that you would want to be able to report on signal, again, how that device is being used, what the user activity is on that device day to day. If that device is meant to be accessing any sort of hosted service, application, you would want to know if, again, that device has a passcode, if the device is encrypted, if the device has out-of-date software, known malicious applications, those are all different inputs that we can take account of and use that as a decision point as to whether the device should be used to provision an employee badge. At the same time, again, looking at suspicious activity, how the user is interacting on that specific device. If they're going through and clicking on, let's say, apps or sites that are known to contain malicious content, if there are SMS messages, emails, et cetera, that have links that link out to known phishing websites, do you want to be able to allow, again, access to some sort of stored credential on that device if somebody is actively phishing for that user's credentials? And so again, those all become inputs that make a decision as to whether you should allow for that process to continue or not.
I'll switch places with you here, Mike. Thank you. So this is a bit of a show and tell, but we did tell, and now we're going to show. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you how provisioning works, how an employee actually gets an employee badge in Apple Wallet from within the Jamf Trust app. 2, how a user transacts with enterprise resources or doors to get through them. And then lastly, some critical lifecycle management steps that occur throughout the journey, like what happens whenever a user loses a phone. Couple of quick notes. We will be here all week. We have a booth, so stop by, have an individual conversation. We'll also have time for Q&A, almost certainly at the conclusion here. So just a few more minutes left. So capture some questions. If you're okay with it, feel free to raise your hand after we complete the little demo here. So what we have here, we have a device. This is the Jamf Trust app, and what you're going to see here is the user is going to. I'm going to hit play here. At least I think I am. And we surface the Jamf Trust app. And the first thing that the Jamf Trust app does is it ensures that we have a trusted device, that the device is in compliance with corporate InfoSec requirements. Then we ensure we have a trusted user. So what you see here is, I believe it goes to an Okta, single sign-on, and MFA push. So now we have a trusted device and a trusted user. Only after those 2 conditions are met do we show an Add to Apple Wallet button. You know what to do here. User presses Add to Apple Wallet. Instantly, we get 2 passes provisioned down to Mike's devices here. 1 pass is going to go to the wallet on his iPhone, and a replica goes to the pass on his paired Apple Watch. Those passes have multiple credentials for all of the places where Mike needs to go in his daily life at work. And then we integrate to the physical access control systems, so those credentials are turned on, activated with Mike's full entitlements. So by the time he sees this screen, he has 2 fully provisioned passes. 1 on iPhone, and a second on Apple Watch. But importantly, they are fully activated for all of Mike's entitlements based on his role within the organization. He does not have to stop by a front desk. He does not have to talk to a security officer. And he does not have to show his ID like he's some sort of criminal. Self-service, over-the-air provisioning, right? Key first step on a trusted device with a trusted user. Next, let's talk about how to transact with a device. So now it's not Mike, now it's Brandon. I'm going to step off stage because I don't want to fall off. But how do you think this works, right? For the past 30 years, raise your hand if you have readers that look something like this on the doors of your office, yeah? Okay, seen them before? You know what to do, right? A user taps these, typically with a card, and the transaction with a contactless card is great. Our card works in 200 milliseconds, 100% of the time, and ding, 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 so does the iPhone. 200 milliseconds, 100% of the time, even if the phone battery needs to be charged, iPhone will work when the pass is in Apple Wallet. And if you don't have your phone on you at all, you can use your Apple Watch. Any guesses on how that works?
Hey.
Yeah. Just tap it. All right? If they've ever used a contactless card, they'll figure it out. So that's how a user transacts with a device. Now, what happens if I lose my device? So let's say I've lost it. Well, let's say I have it right now, and it's working just fine, and it falls into the hands of a bad guy.
What a bad guy.
Actually a bad guy, right?
I can hold it for you.
So you can just hold this. I'll get this. So what would you do if you lose your phone? Wait a second, bad guy. What do you do? So I'm going to go to Jamf Pro, and I'm going to mark this device as lost, right? I'm going to take it, well, first of all, it becomes my highest priority. Like, if I didn't have my phone on me, I wouldn't be up here. I know that I committed to this and everything like that, but it would be the highest priority of my life. I mean, on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, your iPhone is like at the very bottom, right? To heck with safety or food or shelter, where's my iPhone? Highest priority. So I am going to take action as a user, and I am going to mark my phone as lost. Don't erase the device. Okay. Wow, this is super dangerous to be doing here live. We'll see. It always scares me to mark my phone as lost here. So what should happen when I do this is we should do two things in parallel. One is we're going to suspend the credential on the device so that it can't be used. But just in case this bad guy turned it into airplane mode, we also connect to all of the access control systems to deactivate the pass and the credential. So even if it's offline, we're going to render it completely useless. So Mike, Mr. Bad Guy, let's give it a shot. Hopefully this works, which means it doesn't work. Doesn't work. Woo! Now, importantly, my watch is not lost. I did not mark that as lost. I still have this. And I still have unfettered access with my watch and my cards. So we've isolated it where the user, as a priority, has marked the device as lost, not because I really cared that much about my employee badge. I mean, I love my office, but I love my photos. I love my text message and my other personal data. And I took action to preserve my privacy, which positively impact the security posture of the organization. Now, whenever I find my device, I've now apprehended this criminal. I've reported him to the authorities. And now I'm going to take my phone out of lost mode, which I don't do this very often, but it is making me type in my passcode and then my iCloud account. We're not doing screen share on this, are we? OK, good. So now I've taken it out of lost mode. Now what should happen here is we reverse what we just did. We take the device out of lost mode, we reactivate the credential in wallet, and then we also connect to the physical access control systems and reactivate the credential there. So what should happen here, and if it does, we'll have one more round of applause and we'll get some Q&A, is it should work. So let's see here. And it works, right? Okay. So I think that is, let's talk about how it all snaps together. So a lot of people say, well, how does that work? Well, I mean, most people really don't care, but this is JNUC, so you guys care how it all works. So let's talk through that. Your users don't, as long as it works, they don't care. So this is sort of the infrastructure that a lot of our clients have in place. They have a physical access control system. They'll have some readers in place. You've got Wallet on iPhone. And Access Cloud is our product. And it sort of sits here in the middle. And one thing that we do is we connect to a user directory. Show of hands in the room. Anybody have Microsoft Azure, Okta, anything like that? Yeah, OK. Almost everybody has it, right? So we integrate to that platform using SCIM, a standard-based protocol to determine who are the eligible mobile users. And then we have an SDK that's built into the Jamf Trust app that powers that add to Apple Wallet functionality. Of course, that's gated by single sign-on. We connect to single sign-on, Google, Okta, Microsoft. So using OpenID Connect, we know we have a trusted user. And then we integrate on the back end to a credential provider. HID Global, Wavelinks, Allegiant, Legic, those are some large manufacturers in the physical access control space who provision credentials compatible with the reader install base, so you don't have to rip and replace hardware. And we integrate to the Apple backend that allows us to take those credentials and put them securely on iPhone or Apple Watch. So now we've got a pass on iPhone and Apple Watch, but it won't open up a door yet until we integrate via API to the access control system in the tenant space, in this case, in the enterprise. We update the user's record with the 2 new credential numbers, and we add any access levels or clearance codes that are necessary for that user to get unfettered access based on their role within the organization. But most of our clients, their space doesn't just look like this. It's not just doors. They also have secure print release, where you have to flash a card, typically in order to get access to a print job or a locker. So we can integrate to those beyond the door use cases to power a seamless access experience, not just at the door, but at the printers, at the lockers, at the canteen, and so forth. And then a lot of our clients, their spaces look like this. They control their domain inside their tenant space, but they lease office in a multi-tenant building where the base building, the front door, the amenity spaces, the turnstiles, the elevators, the stairwells are in someone else's access system. It's for the landlord. And so what I didn't share is that we don't just put one credential on the pass, we're sparing the user a complexity. Currently today, it's commonplace for a user who needs access to both of these places to carry 2 pieces of plastic. I present this piece of plastic at the base building, at the turnstile, at the stairwell, and I present this piece of plastic in my tenant space. We're taking those 2 credentials and we're unifying them under the hood of a single pass, and then we're integrating on the right-hand side with the access control system that powers the base building, so a user doesn't have to care or even know that it's 2 separate access systems with 2 separate reader technologies with 2 separate entities that are controlling access to the space. So this is the how, in case you care. All right? All right, so we've already done the demo. We'll, if you guys, do you have anything to add before we open it up?
No, I think we can just jump right to questions, and if we run out of questions, we'll answer a few of these in the grab bag up here.
Okay, so yeah, I have a couple questions already in the queue. One here was, can you elaborate on managed Apple IDs versus personal Apple IDs in respect to badges in the Apple Wallet? Pros, cons of one versus the other, and are there best practices or recommendations around this already?
Let me start from where we're coming from right now. Whenever you hand a user a piece of plastic, they take that piece of plastic and they put it in their personal leather wallet. And most organizations don't recognize a security threat there. The issuance of the card, the life cycle of the card is what they care about, not necessarily the wallet you're putting it in. Right now, Apple supports an iCloud account that's a personal iCloud account. An iCloud account must be logged in on the device to activate the wallet, not just for employee badge and Apple Wallet, but also for credit cards and everything like that. We are told that coming soon, Apple will also support managed IDs for Apple Wallet, so Apple Wallet will be available. That should be resolved, if it's not already, by the end of the year. So you can use both. I would say, and I'm curious as to your thoughts here. Academically, from a security perspective, I'm not sure that it makes a huge difference. In this case, employee badge is stored on the embedded secure element in iPhone or Apple Watch. It's a trusted endpoint of its own. So the fact the user's logged in with one iCloud account or another, it doesn't really change the security of the credential on the device or your ability to manage its life cycle in an instant by revoking that credential from the device or turning it on the server side, turning it off on the server side. But
Yeah,
any thoughts?
A couple of quick thoughts there. First of all, good news. Today's Tuesday. Yesterday, with iOS 17, that problem was solved. So managed Apple IDs for an enterprise can contain an Apple Wallet employee credential in them.
Well, whoever asked that question, with the power of positive thinking, right? I mean, you ask the question and let it be
solved
so.
yesterday.
Thank you very much, whoever asked the question.
So that's great. I will say, just as an example of a use case at Jamf, we allow users to have a personal Apple ID on their phone. And so many of us have got our credential in our, assigned to our personal Apple ID in the wallet application. I mean, as an example, I have my Jamf corporate card. I also have my personal Apple card and other cards that I use for my own personal life, and they're interspersed. There's not really an idea of needing to segregate things in Apple Wallet because there's no information sharing. There's no way that they really interact with each other. So unlike when you have work email or managed open-in or managing copy and paste settings so that you can't move data between 2 sources in Apple Wallet, that really isn't a security risk. So we use them in personal Apple IDs at Jamf. You could absolutely use them on a managed Apple ID for your enterprise. They work in both spaces.
But piggybacking on that, 2 years ago, Apple was saying that they were going to support 2 Apple IDs, a work Apple ID and a personal. As developers, have you heard where they're at with that?
Just to clarify, you're saying that a device should support 2 Apple IDs, a work and a personal.
Okay.
I'm just repeating the question.
Yeah, so
for the
it's a
stream.
good question. And like I said, too, with managed Apple IDs in iOS 17, as an example, on my phone, I currently have 2 Apple IDs logged in on my device. I have my personal Apple ID, which is the one that has all my wallet credentials. And then I have my managed Apple ID provisioning all my work services, which was done through account-driven user enrollment. So I do have 2 coexisting Apple IDs on my device. Yep.
Okay, so we have one more, we have another question here. Excuse me. Is Jamf required to utilize Swift Connect? Example would be when we aren't enrolling personal devices into Jamf. I think it was a good question because I know that we talked about that whole identity and everything else, but
Yeah, is Jamf required? So the only reason that Swift Connect is integrated with Jamf is because you have to have their backend service connected to something that the user interacts with. And so the user is the one who requests the credential using a specific application with the Swift Connect SDK. So actually, in the purest sense, it doesn't care if that user is using a BYOD device or if they're using a corporate-owned device. It doesn't really matter. But what does absolutely matter is that Swift Connect negotiates everything that happens in the background between the credential provider, the access control system, to make sure that everything knows who the user is, which credential they have, and what they have access to. The application, Jamf Trust, is what gives the user the ability to manage that life cycle and request a pass, or remove the pass, or re-add the pass, if that makes sense. Brandon, anything else?
Yeah, you know, what we care about and what we require, because our brand's associated with this too, as is Apple's, is that we want to make damn sure that before a pass is issued to a device, it is a trusted device and it is a trusted user. And the reason that we're so happy to be here at Jamf Nation User Conference and be partners with Jamf is we think they provide that assurance in a really good way, in a really seamless manner for a user. So strictly required, no. But good practice, best practice, yes. And that's because such a delightful experience to give high assurance on trusted device, trusted user.
And it is the essence of literally being able to make a differentiation between a badge that gets left on the street and nobody knows who it is and there's no life cycle around it, versus the user's in control of everything. They know where it is, they can remedy it, they can re-request it, et cetera.
yeah, we have one with the hand up.
Yeah.
You mentioned integration with Azure AD or Entra, Microsoft Entra. Is there a minimum level licensing required for end users? For example, I'm thinking frontline workers that may not be licensed for E3 level licensing. Is there anything? What's the minimum level?
Rob's going to ask the question.
Yep, please go ahead.
So just to clarify, is there a specific license requirement, for example, on Entra ID, if it E3 or E5, specifically for this to work? So that, like, for example, frontline workers, they may not be, fully licensed, but yet still need to have a badge to access work resources, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect.
I think the answer is no. I haven't run into it if there is some sort of licensing minimum. We really connect using 2 open standards to Azure, now Entra or Okta or any similar platform, SCIM and OpenID Connect. And I think that allows us to authenticate a user and get user group settings at the lowest level. But it's not the only source of truth we can use. If there's a more appropriate source of truth around contractors or visitors, such as a visitor management system, we can connect to that as well. It's just a really efficient way. Most people are managing their users and permissions inside of Entra when they license it. And so that seems to be an easy way, but not the only way to get eligible users into the system. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, yep.
Oh, perfect. What are the hardware requirements for badge readers for this to work properly? There's like a specific source that they would need?
There's not a specific source. I mean, the idea, the whole concept behind our platform is you keep the readers you have, you keep the access control system you have, everything works the way it did before, but now you have a choice program. You can allow Apple Watch and iPhone to work in addition to the plastic cards it did before. So to answer the question directly, the vast majority of readers that were manufactured and shipped since about 2016 support near-field communication natively. So I typically tell clients or prospective clients, if you have a reader that was installed since 2016, budget a firmware upgrade maybe of the device. If it's before 2016, it may be a bit dated, and you may budget a hardware replacement. But importantly, the locks, the wire, the controllers, the software, that will all stay. At most, what you're talking about for a decade-old reader is just replacing the reader terminal itself. Apple has a program where they certify manufacturer hardware in labs. They have a long list of reader terminals that are already certified from some of the largest manufacturers in the space right now, and that list is ever growing. So if your hardware isn't supported today and it's relatively new, it's coming soon, certainly.
Okay, because I have all the power, I get to hold the iPad. There's one here that caught me. It kind of coincides with the grab bag a little bit, but it's a good question. Do you know of how much of this can be done with Android for workplaces, as in where people use both iOS and Android? And do you have any key tips for finding good resources on this?
Yeah, there's nothing actually about the experience that can't work on Android. So the idea of a near-field credential being on an Android device to use the same terminal to unlock the door exists in the same way. The way it manifests is a little bit different. Apple Wallet is obviously a Apple unique place for the credential to be stored, but you can put a credential on an Android device in an application to unlock the door. And that's something, actually, you know, the Jamf Trust app runs cross-platform. You can run it on an iPhone, you can run it on Android to do threat detection, ZTNA policies, and that, of course, scope includes employee badge as well. Anything else you'd add?
Yeah, it's not theoretical. I mean, the majority of our deployments, we have a user population that has some Android devices as well. So two things that we ensure are true. It's a self-service provisioning experience based on a trusted device and trusted user, and it's an NFC card emulation experience at a reader terminal. Those things hold true on the Android platform as well, and we won't fail to deliver that, at least on the projects we're involved in.
We have a hand up, yep.
IVM? Yeah, actually, there's a client that we're working with right now who has those. And you know what they use it for? Is they use it for, the question was, have we seen any use cases around integration with vending machines? And IVM, if I'm not mistaken, the client we're working with has like IT resources, like power supplies and dry erase markers and batteries and stuff like that.
We had to build custom.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, I have, and it's not difficult to interface with. There's just two things. One is a lot of those readers are kind of old there. There's not a lot of them, but upgrading the reader to a modern one that you would have on your doors. And the other thing is on the server side, just integrating to the software that manages the users and the credential numbers. That's something we can do pretty easily, so that it's actually an important question. You don't want to just make sure that the doors work and the printers work and the lockers work, but everywhere you use a plastic card needs to be able to use the iPhone or Apple Watch in order to give the right experience for your users. Mike, did you guys do this? Do you guys have those vending machines?
Yeah, because we rolled out vending machines just
Okay.
for that purpose, for keyboards, mice, lightning
Okay.
cables way, way back. But then when we went through the project to incorporate all these flows into our own offices, we did just that. We replaced the readers, I want to say, on each of the vending machines. And yeah, now you just use your...
Now, I heard a rumor about those vending machines at Jamf, though. And I want you to tell me right now, on stage, if it's true. I heard they have MacBooks and iPhones in those vending machines. True or false?
Not true.
Not true? Okay.
But they have all kinds of other neat
highly-
things like AirPods.
Quick thing is, so say you're replacing all them retroactively with the years with
Yeah, the Brevo readers are made by an original equipment manufacturer by the name of Wavelinks, close partner of ours, absolutely support them. Head of partnerships from Brevo, a guy by the name of John, met with them last week at the Global Security Exchange. So we're close with Brevo. They have an API, and the Brevo readers are absolutely supported as part of the Apple program and technically as well. So no issue there.
Okay, we're out of time, so I appreciate the questions and Q&A, and we can finish up.
Thank you for the time.